Okay, it's windy today. But hey guys, it's Sebastian. I want to make a quick video because of something I've been seeing a lot recently. And you might have even personally experienced this. I know I have. And it's this fallacy that has been propagated over the last couple of years, especially by the red pill space and by all these older guys who they might do pretty well in business in their career, but in terms of relationships and feeling okay and having mental health and feeling connected, this is something that's missing there. And it's this idea that if you don't have a certain amount of money, if you don't have a certain amount of social status, you don't own these things, you don't look a certain way, that not only will women not be attracted to you at all, but society will just look at you like dead weight and they won't want anything to do with you. Obviously, there's a nuance to everything. If a guy who is in his 30s, living with his parents, never held a job, never never got a driver's license, never traveled, never actually picked up women, he's a virgin, is hearing that kind of advice, then it's gonna sting, but that's kind of the truth. But if you're a guy who is at least making an effort and who puts time into himself in all these different areas, you you shouldn't compare yourself or force yourself to measure up to some arbitrary crazy standard and then give it so much power over your life. What do I mean? What I mean is that if we're just looking at the context of women, for example, how do you explain the fact that there are guys out there in all sorts of different countries? I know many of you know that I've lived in Latin America and I still do, and you can make the argument that it's poor over there and all that stuff. But no, all sorts of different countries, Canada, United States, the UK, parts of Europe, Asia, whatever it is. There are guys out there who are who have one or many of the traits that I named off earlier that a rational red pilled guy would probably imagine would completely disqualify him from getting any sort of attractive women in his life, and by extension, also having any kind of societal acceptance and respect and recognition. Short, fat, ugly, weird hairline, no money, very little money, low status job, crappy car, no car, living in a dump, no place to live, living with his mom, whatever it is. I'm not saying that it's good to be in any of these positions. Obviously not. Obviously, we aspire to have a certain lifestyle for ourselves, and that varies based on the individual. But so many guys, especially guys who are chronically online, are just brainwashed into believing that they have to be a 10 out of 10 in every single area. They have to be a freaking crazy celebrity with all this money. They have to be have perfect model looks and be 6'4". It's it's a mental disease that I see going out there. It's it's traumatizing. It's shocking. And I've definitely been slighted and disappointed in the past by a lot of my brothers, a lot of my fellow men. At the end of the day, I mean, when I was in Europe, just gonna wrap up the video. When I was in Europe and I was walking around and marveling at all the different incredible works of art, the architecture, the 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 way that hedges and trees were kept, every single little thing, every detail, even down to the bricks and the tiles used in walkways. These guys didn't have the technology that we have right now, not even a fraction of it. You can imagine just how much sweat, blood, and tears went into putting together even just a pretty basic looking building at the time, let alone a, a grand church like the Catedral de Notre Dame or La Sagrada Familia. But they did it even though they knew that their names would be forgotten, that no one would really know who they were. No one would really appreciate them as people that much, but their work would stand the test of time. And they were giving something to humanity, even in spite of all the kind of wrong and all the crap that they themselves might have had to put up with their whole life. Because they recognized that to just mope around and get down in the dumps because other people didn't treat them well or didn't treat them the way that they expected to, and use that as an excuse not to live up to their highest self and their highest standards. Well, they knew that that was that was cowardice. It's cowardice is what it is. And take it from me, I was treated pretty badly in high school and university by a lot of people, unprovoked, you know, just because a lot of people wanted to take out their frustrations out on me. Maybe they saw me as a threat, maybe they saw me as above them, they were jealous of me, or below them, and they felt like I was an easy target, whatever it is. And I didn't use as an excuse over the long term to just sit around and have a pity party. Everyone can have a pity party. I'm not against pity parties, but the problem is when those go on for weeks and weeks, months and months, years and years. That's when you got to put your foot down and say enough's enough. You know, this is the way I feel. This is how I'm emotionally reacting to it. And, you know, right now it's very easy for me to come on camera and talk about all these things. But when you're in the heat of a moment, when you've just broken up with a woman, when you've been wronged in business, when you've been wronged by someone you trusted, it's much easier said than done to just let it roll off your back and forget about it. Because maybe some of those, one or all of those things have happened to you in the past, and it wasn't easy to just let it go. And maybe it brewed some resentment within you too. And again, I don't blame you for that, especially based on the scenario that might even be very justifiable. But the biggest problem again is letting those kinds of feelings to continue to fester, and then, you know, as they say, misery loves company. And then you get involved in these echo chambers on the internet with, or even in real life, now that these kinds of thoughts have spread so far. Coming into contact with all these other guys who just have so much negativity to spread, and they don't uplift you, and they're just so focused in on the pain and the wrongdoing and the negativity. I'm not even talking about offering solutions. I'm just talking about learning to be okay with not being okay, and then getting over it because life goes on and because there are really a lot of great things to look forward to, especially if you're young, right? I'm 30 years old. You know, 10 years ago, I would have thought, oh my God, if I'm not a millionaire by 30, if I'm not doing XYZ by 30, I'm totally failing in life. And, you know, some might say that's a ridiculous standard. Some might say that's actually a fairly easy standard to live up to. Regardless, it just, guys create a lot of problems for themselves by continuing to swim through these waters and continue to pollute their own mind. And this is all just, I'll put it this way. The last thing I'll say, guys, I know this is a little convoluted, but I've had a lot of time to think being back here in Canada again. And you guys know me, I think a lot. And that's why I make these videos, because I want to share what's on my mind and see how many of you can relate. But I was looking back on the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years of my life after having left this place and being on my own, making internet money and changing in so many ways. And one of the hardest things for people, but mostly men, to admit is that a lot of the problems that we have now in our lives are probably shouldn't be problems, and they should have been solved a long time ago, but we hold on to them because of the pain that we had in the past, and we feel like letting go or forgiving or just taking action, um, and making some sacrifices to truly solve those problems is like a betrayal to ourselves in some way, but it's not. You know, you're carrying all these burdens from 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, in some people's cases, 10 years ago. And you might have felt pain in that moment, but that doesn't mean you have to continue holding on to that pain now. That doesn't mean that you have to continue to live under its shadow. That once you change your perspective, once you grow up, once you meet other people, you see how other people live, and you get some wins in your life, maybe it's just time to kind of say, you know what, enough's enough. That's just it. It's not a problem that I'm going to continue to have in my life, and I'm going to admit that there are solutions, and I may not like those solutions, but do I want to continue living with the pain of this problem, or would I rather finally solve it and get the things that I want and feel good again and give myself permission to feel good again? It really can be that easy.